He is one of the most respected NFL newsbreakers in the game today. It is the great Adam Caplan. You can find him on Fox Sports Radio, Sirius XM, tons of different podcasts. He's been doing this for over 20 years, and he is one of the best in the business. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio, and I thought, Adam, why not give us an opportunity to spotlight your career a little bit and celebrate your successes? I also saw, is this true? Are you a vegan?
Yeah, I'm mostly vegan. Yeah. So Bryan, when I started really working on my health, I was 240 pounds. I'm down to about 212, 213. And what also helps is I'm a pretty avid tennis player right now. With the COVID shutdown, I had to figure out another way to keep my weight down. So I took up tennis, and I'm kind of addicted to it where I've had enough of golf. I can't deal with it anymore. So I had to do something else. And tennis, as you know, you can play indoors. So it's a little bit easier to do that.
So you're doing a lot of tennis. I saw that on your profile on Twitter. What I love about you, Adam, and I want to ask you about this, is you are a go-getter, you are a grinder, you are a hustler, and you've needed to rely on those traits to get your career out there to flourish. If you were to name a football player's career trajectory and see any similarities to your career trajectory, who would that be?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I've never been asked that question before when I've been interviewed about my career.
I was trying to stump you, trying to do something different.
Like every couple of years, somebody wants to talk to me about my career, and it's cool. This is such a unique question. I would say, because I think you profiled me correctly, being a grinder. That's actually what my boss from ESPN called me, Seth Markman. I took that as a compliment. I did when I was there. He said that's what he liked about me most, is that I grind and I'm always doing something. I'm always busy. And that's really true. I wouldn't say I'm kind of like Rich Gannon, I would say. Rich is actually because Rich, like in my 20s, right? Rich was sort of a journeyman quarterback in his 20s. In my 20s, I was trying to figure out life, my career. And in my 30s, I started to figure it out. I started to do this and that, as you said. The one great tip I got, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been Jay Glazer, former business partner, who's obviously Fox Sports' NFL Insider, does a great job. And he gave me some tips about being versatile. You can't just do one thing. It was definitely he was one of the people who said it, but I didn't quite know back in 2000 what he meant until it actually happened. So I went through my first layoff. I've been laid off twice in 25, 26 years. And for the younger audience out there, you got to have versatility in your career. No matter how good you think you are at your job, things happen that are out of your control, and you've got to be able to pivot, to use that phrase, to something else, because you just never know what's going to happen. And then with the COVID shutdown, you don't have to be in sports media, which has been brutal the last 4 or 5 years in terms of people losing jobs. You could be in the restaurant industry, which my wife and I love. I mean, it kills us not to be able to go out to go to restaurants. And where you are, of course, in the LA area, I mean, does it get any better than that? So that's where you want to spend your time. And no matter what business you're in, you've got to be able to do something else. If you can't, you're going to be out of work.
Adam Caplan is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. When you were first getting your start, what did that grind look like? To what extremes would you put yourself through to try to separate yourself from the others and establish yourself?
It's funny. Back in, I don't know, 2000, 2001, I made a decision. I was like, all right, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with my career? Okay. Do I want to go back into sales? Do I want to stay in journalism? I was actually one of the first bloggers on the internet. I was working for a company called fanball.com, which unfortunately had its demise in 01 or 02. But I was like, all right, I want to disseminate news. Whether I didn't know I'd be breaking news at that point, I want to disseminate it. I want to figure out what it means and how people can learn from it. Because that was the thing growing up in the Philadelphia area, though there were some really good reporters. I was really not learning enough. I wanted to learn about football. Why did you do that? Why did the team sign this player? I wasn't always an Eagles fan. I was actually a Raider fan growing up. Oh, wow. Somewhat an Eagle fan. It's kind of weird being in this market, but I like both teams. But anyway, no matter what sport I was a fan of, I was not finding out the inside skinny about how they put that decision together. And it was my thirst for knowledge. I never stopped that And that's why I'm on that grind to make calls, to receive calls, to text, as we do these days, obviously. And always on the phone. I'm always on the phone almost. I mean, whether it's texting or by voice, it's in my profile because I'm always sleeping with my phone. It's just my wife called it my mistress. I get it. This one she could see. You know, no, I'm just kidding. But that's what you got to do, man. You got to grind and you got to know what's going on.
Why do you think so many people trust you to dispel inside information?
I mean, when you say it's inside information, what it is, when it comes to the National Football League, we call it an information exchange. That's what I learned in the early 2000s when I first started to put out my first information. It was, okay, Bryan, if you're the guy that I got information from, I got to make sure people don't know that I got it from you. And I'm going to protect you, my source. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to do. That's the first and foremost thing. I'm proud to say in 21 years, I've never burned anyone. I mean, people could say a lot about me that whatever they want to say, but you'll never say that I burned anybody. That's for sure. And I'm proud of that. The most important thing is to be right, obviously, when you report, you don't need to be first. Sure, we'd all like to be first, but we need to be right. And that's the key to it. When nobody's perfect, you can put out 500 scoops a year. Probably 2 or 3 aren't going to look exactly right. Learn from your mistake and move on and correct it. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at information, you have to disseminate it, use it in the right way. And the number one goal is, and I use this in every platform that I'm in, I got to make sure you learn something from me that day. If you can learn something, I've done my job. It may confirm something you already know, or I taught you something or gave you something you didn't know about. If you do that, that is my mantra of everything that I do in my life.
There's another Adam who's pretty big up in the NFL news breaking
I used to work with him.
A man who's had a great effect on you, somebody who has a lot of respect for you as well. He's spoken publicly on the record about his appreciation, his admiration for you. What effect does he have on you, and has he had on you to become the person and the entity in this business you've become today?
I assume you're talking about Adam Schefter, of course.
Yes.
So what happened was, it's interesting. In 2013, in 2012, 2011, 2010, and all, Schefter and I are competing against each other for scoops. I didn't know him. I don't know if I said 5 words to the guy in my life. And I was at the NFL owners meetings in 2013 in March, in I believe the Biltmore in Phoenix. Said, hey, he asked me what I was doing with my career. I left Fox Sports like a year and a half before that. I was telling him what I was doing. He said, hey, I want you to meet my boss, Seth Markman. I'm like, okay. And he said, Seth goes, hey, we have this new show we're calling the NFL Insiders. And I stopped him. I go, let me guess. It's a panel show where reporters put out scoops. He's like, did someone tell you that? I go, no, but what else could it be? So, and he explained it. It was a panel show with 4 of us. And he said, do you have any conflicts? I'm like, right now I don't, but I could in the fall. And it would turn out to be true. 2 radio stations in Philly both offered me jobs at the same time. Comcast Sportsnet in Philly offered me a job, and a couple other entities did. And being that I didn't have a full-time job, I could do whatever I wanted. So I said, yeah, let's do this. And I always appreciated Schefter for doing that because he didn't know me. He appreciated my work, I guess. I didn't know the guy. Chris Mortensen, I know a little bit. Mort doesn't believe this, but I've told him more than once that he was the inspiration for my career. I was mesmerized with his ability, Bryan, in the mid-90s. This is before texting.
Okay.
To put a scoop out and spend a minute and a half explaining it. The detail was unbelievable. I'm like, this is unbelievable. How's he do this? So I fast forward to 1998 or 99. Mort and I are at a fantasy football conference, believe it or not. And again, I didn't know him. And either I or somebody else asked him about Dorsey Levens and what was going on with his contract. He goes, you know what? Hang on a second. I'm going to call Ron Wolf. So he picks his phone up. Who was the general manager at the time. And I'm like, he's calling him. Like, how does he do this? Like, how can he do this? And I was just like, all right, I'm hooked. I got to do this. Like, I have to do this. But how do you get into it if you're not, I was not in the industry then. I was actually writing about fantasy football. I wasn't sure if I wanted to become a reporter. I didn't know, my background in sales. I was a writer earlier, but I didn't. The only advantage I had, Bryan, and which kids now have the best advantage of all, I got involved in reporting in the infancy of the internet. Now, obviously, as we fast forward 20 years, there's information everywhere. Whereas when I started, there were not a lot of us doing what's happening now, breaking news and not only breaking news, but explaining it whether I or somebody else puts it out, I could tell you what the team was thinking. Within 2 minutes, I could get someone, hey, why did you guys sign this guy? Why are you guys going to trade for this guy? Like when Jamal Adams was traded, I forget who broke the story, but I went on Fox Sports Radio. I talked to the Seahawks and Jets within 5 minutes. I got, okay, here's why the Jets traded him, and here's why the Seahawks wanted him. I was able to do that. So I taken my mantra, you may beat me to the story, but I'm going to make the fans smarter and tell them something they didn't know.
How has Gerry Matalon made you smarter? Because I know the effect that he's had on your
audience. How did you
I do my homework.
Holy smokes. Gerry is one of the most important people in my life in terms of mentoring and understanding what reporters and analysts and people in the news business and television business go through. So my agent at the time hooked me up with him in 2013. Gerry is the top performance coach for media television people. He does radio too, by the way.
Sure.
So I get with him. I'd never heard of a performance coach. The only performance coach I knew was Tony Robbins, who I've always admired, at least I did years ago, in terms of understanding the way you have to challenge yourself and everything. So, I sit down with him in the fall of 2013. I was on a contributor contract with ESPN, and he watches my tape from ESPN, and also he must have got Comcast Sportsnet tape. And Gerry will not mind, because I've told this before on the record, so I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't want me to, he's not going to get mad at me for saying this. So what happened was, just like I'm sitting with you, like you're in front of me here.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I got to tell you, I saw your tape. And he might have put his hands on my shoulders, or he put the hands on the chair, and he goes, you're boring. And I'd been on television since 96, but locally as a contributor, never at the network level. And I'm deflated. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like I'm shocked, but typical of me, because I want to be coached. I said, Gerry, all right, Britt, let's go. Now I'm going to take
I love it.
Man. And he didn't rip me or yell or anything, but he was pointing out all my flaws. I was like this. I remember it. I mean, this is 8 years ago, Bryan. I remember it like it just happened. And the thing for the folks out there, you must be coachable. I use this term and I live this every day. You must be your own harshest critic. You can never get better unless you take responsibility. You cannot get better in life, whether it's with your wife or your husband, whether it's being a father to your kids. I mean, I learned that through my father. My father passed away in 2013, but my father and I certainly had our challenges, but he was hard as hell on me. And I didn't appreciate him enough, and unfortunately, until he passed away. That's something that we should appreciate our parents even more when they're alive. Like I appreciate my mom, who's just turned 91 this week. But one of the things that he left my brothers and I was compassion, but being hard on yourself, because he was hard as hell on me. And that's one of the gifts that he gave me. I didn't even know that I had until I got older, when I started trying to figure out why certain things weren't happening. Instead of pointing the finger at that person, I pointed the finger at myself, because I knew I could have done a better job. And I'll be honest with you, there are very few times in my life where I felt that if I could have avoided a situation, like where I got laid off in ESPN, I don't think there's anything I could have done about it because of the issues that are going on in our industry. But in 2011, when I got laid off during the lockout with Fox Sports, I'm sure there's something I could have done to save my job. Now, I'll be honest with you, I walked into 3 or 4 jobs, which some of it's luck, some of it's networking. And you talk about the grind. I'm a networker by trade. So thank God I was able to walk in a bunch of jobs, but I still think I could have saved my job if I just would have kind of planned a little better. So again, folks, if you've learned anything about watching Bryan and I here, you got to plan. And as Gerry Matalon told me, have your off ramp. Gerry told me he got laid off in 2015. He told me, because he knew that there was a possibility I could be laid off. He said to me, he goes, please, whatever you do, plan your off ramp, have something to walk into if you can. And even when I got laid off at ESPN in April, like 2 days before the draft, I still was able to walk into stuff and also come up with some ideas to run my own business. So again, got to be able to pivot to something else.
My final question, Adam Caplan with us, NFL Insider. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio. You brought up your dad. I did some research on sort of what you've said about him in articles in the past. And I lost my dad to cancer as well when I was a teenager. And he was really hard on me as well. And I never felt, and I'm sure you could agree with this, that I never felt like I could ever live up to his expectations. But like a football player talks about, and you know better than anyone, Adam, these guys like to play with a purpose, somebody in the back of their head. Who are they doing this for? Where is that hard work coming from? Why are they grinding? And so my final question for you, Adam, is when you look at the grind, you look at what you've done, your work ethic, how much is it attributed to your father and trying to get his validation in a way?
It's funny, Bryan. I remember within 6 months to a year before he passed away. This is crazy that he said this, but this is typical of my father. So, and I know he meant it in a positive way or a backhanded compliment. So he looks at me, he goes, Adam, I don't think you've become a success. And I was like stunned. I mean, I know my dad was hard on me. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, but I know what he meant, because I was not a good student. I could never, like, I might have gone to law school someday. I had an interest in law, but I was not a good test taker. I didn't want to do that. So I could never figure out what the hell I wanted to do. And he saw that, but my brothers and I were kind of like that. We started our careers later in life. And when my father said that to me, I was like, this is just kind of the way he sees me. But thank God, before he passed away, it was, it was shortly before I went to ESPN. Yeah, he passed away in April 13, and I started my training started in July of 2013. So he was able to know, he knew that I got an offer from ESPN to be a contributor before he passed away, which was pretty cool. But I just thought it was so funny that he would say that to me. But you know what? Hey, that was my dad. Okay, so at least he saw me doing something with my life, and I was happy about that.
Yeah, and you continue to make him proud, whether he wants to, in spirit, admit it deep down. I know he would. Adam Caplan, find him on Fox Sports Radio, Sirius XM, and many other platforms. Also follow him on Twitter. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at FSR. Adam, this has been a lot of fun, man. I know you're busy, and so I'm very grateful just for a couple minutes of your time. It means a lot.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the invite.